Oh, I think we're live. I think it's decided not to play the intro. So we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 131 of the AutoTalk Weekly Wrap. Now, apologies if the signal gets a bit dodgy and jumpy today. I am in Uppity, which is the gateway to the Tararuas.
A little bit of a lag there, but you got
Yeah.
it.
So I'm in Uppity, the gateway to the Tararuas. My mother lives here. She's one of all about 5 people that do live here. There is a lovely pub. And at the end, you'll notice I'm sitting in a car. I've been driving around the country in the last couple of days in this full self-driving Tesla. And it is amazing. And I will tell you guys, I'll show you guys how it works at the end of the stream. It could be a bit dodgy on the coverage, but we'll give it a go. Someone's watching, so hello if you're other person that is watching. But yeah, look, this technology is nuts. I drove from Bombay to Rainbow Point without touching the steering wheel. That is just cool. Unreal. And then from there to Uppity, which is up in mountain roads. It was foggy, it was rainy. And the only 2 times I had to touch the steering wheel was we had some flooding. I had to steer around some flooding. And then I decided to dodge a pothole that it couldn't see. There are reasons at dodging potholes. I was with some people from the NZK yesterday, and we took it for a drive around central Wellington. And it went through some crazy narrow roads, very slowly, but it did it. If anyone knows Devon Street in Tiaro, David, I'm not sure if you know that, by the university.
Yep.
Literally, it is a car's width, and it made it through there slowly, but it made it through there, including reversing without being told to do so to avoid a Land Cruiser that was somewhat kamikaze-ing through the gap. So, super impressive. And it's interesting, I think people look at this as a technology for nerds. Sorry, I'm going to have some water to brag to their mates about it. I see it as a real accessibility issue. Imagine, I've worked in the transport industry before, and the ACC spends millions of dollars a week taxing people with relatively minor injuries or issues or functions. What if they use these to do it? They could save a whole lot of money. Or my mother or my mother-in-law who won't drive at night, who don't like driving into the city for appointments, they would quite happily go in at night or an appointment for this if they're just there needing to take action when they really have to. Sorry, I'm losing my voice, but it's I think it's just incredible technology.
And as you noted last week, Richard, the law would need to change for that to happen, because if the moment a person's in the car, somebody's got to be able to take control if necessary, and if they can't do that, then currently the law doesn't allow it. So to get full mobility, which we should have, then we need to have the law modernized to keep up with the new technology.
I don't think the law needs to be changed for it actually to start off already. I take the example of when we owned a taxi company, we had a contract with ACC to take someone who had a minor wrist injury, but they had fatigue issues where if they tried to drive the long distance to catch a bus to work, it would just be too much for them. But if they only had to intervene once in a while and not hold their hand on the wheel the whole time, well, that is 3 months of taxi costs, which were in the tens of thousands of dollars, that could have been replaced by a short-term rental of a Tesla Model 3. There's some really interesting opportunities.
Yes, that's true for those sorts of things. But if you want proper mobility, what about the impaired who can't drive and have to be chauffeured? Those sorts of things.
But I think if we wait for this thing to be ready for everyone, then you're missing opportunities, as far as I'm concerned.
No, I'm not saying we need to wait, because clearly there are those sorts of things where people can already do it under the law, as you pointed out. But it's Graham raised an interesting example, didn't you, Graham? Now you're at the pub, you're over the limit. There's no way you can safely drive, and so you call your Tesla up or whatever car's got it, and it comes and picks you up. That's all legal. But the moment you slouch into the back seat and lie down because you can't drive, it's no longer legal because you can't take control of the vehicle if necessary. It's that sort of thing that needs to be looked into. We've got time on our side, but yeah.
Well, there's another point to that. I'll catch you on this for a second, Richard, because I don't want to lose this particular point. As we talk about mobility, for example, and he's raised some really good points about people that are unable to drive or temporarily unable to drive. But as the law currently stands, if you have to be able to operate the vehicles, one of the stipulations under full self-drive mode is there has to be somebody capable of taking over the vehicle. That's all very well, but define somebody that's capable of taking over. So if you're suffering from a disability or a temporary disability that impairs your ability to operate a vehicle, and that's the very reason you do have the FSD car, how does that stack up legally? Like, my daughter's not a good example of that. She's actually intellectually capable of driving a vehicle, but you had a mild impairment that did not enable you to make good judgment calls at every stage of your operating of a motor vehicle, hence the reason you don't have a license. How would FSD work for you?
It wouldn't. At this stage, it wouldn't. It's not. I don't think it's ready for that. But where it is ready is there's a lot of people who don't drive or won't drive because dealing with everything for an extended period of time overwhelmed. And I take the example of that of my mother and my mother-in-law, who would avoid driving into appointment at a Central Auckland hospital because the overwhelming nature of having to do everything, navigate, drive the lot for an hour into that location is overwhelming. Well, if they only have to monitor and the car's handling the navigation and the car's within there, it's not going to overwhelm them. So from that, but then you've got that. You also got people who have energy fatigue issues, autoimmune issues, that kind of thing, who won't drive for an extended period of time because they simply don't have the energy to do that, or from a medical perspective. Well, again, you're taking so much of the energy draw out of the driver doing that. And then I take the prime example of that woman with the injured wrist, really mentally capable of driving, 95% physically capable of driving, but she can't hold her hand up there for extended periods of time. I'm putting my hands up on the wheel. That is perfect for her. She's totally capable of taking control for a short period of time. But you just need to take, the load off for that period that she can't do it. So I think that's fantastic from that perspective. Even from people who aren't, the fatigue level of it is really interesting. Sorry. I was speaking to an industry leader yesterday who has a bat somewhere away from Wellington, and they said they would go because the fatigue level of going that place makes it so much easier. My voice is not going to survive. Let's try.
You're sounding like RJK now with every breath you take.
Anything with this, but I was sick a week ago. It just the throat just won't seem to clear is the problem.
Yeah.
You make a good. The technology's already advanced enough that those who've got minor impairment who would think twice about getting in the car and doing something can do so because it's that much easier. And you're right also that doesn't require an immediate law change at all. That's completely and utterly within the confines of the law. As long as you've got a valid driver's license, you can do that. I'm looking forward to the day to those people who can't hold a valid driver's license because of impairment, and for the elderly when they become quite frail, and it's questionable whether they should retain their license. This is where the tech is going, and long live the day when that arrives. Particularly, and I think it's useful because those people tend to drive mostly in urban areas, and it's in the urban areas where this tech really holds its own, because the level of information required for self-drive systems is highly defined, or is tending to be highly defined in the urban areas.
Yeah. And this is all going to happen really quickly now, right? So Elon's indicated there's 3 or 4 big updates coming to full self-drive in the coming weeks. We've got XPeng coming to New Zealand. They have a very good system. IM has landed in New Zealand now. They've got a very good system. All of these cars aren't... Look, I always love it when I say a car is not expensive. I get shot down by people saying, "Oh, that's really expensive." But in the scheme of what moves through the market and volume, it isn't. And this car that I'm sitting in now was about $63,000. And you can put full self-driving on it as a subscription for $160 a month, or buy it, the thing's about 70. That's not drastically expensive. The IM's the same price. In 2 years' time, you better buy cars for, I suspect, in the used market for well under $40,000, which will have this capability. In fact, if they make it viable on hardware 3 on Teslas, which I believe they are, then we're going to see those cars in that $30,000 range in the next year, right? So it's not unobtainium. It's possible, and I think every car company needs to look at it very seriously. And I messaged an exec at the market leader at Toyota saying, well, we're messaging about it, and he was saying, what's it like? And I said, you guys need to take this seriously, because it is a bit of a game changer. And if I lived in Auckland and I had an hour's commute every morning, which a lot of Aucklanders do, 100,000 Aucklanders probably commute an hour every morning, then I would be seriously looking at this. It is that good. Would I still buy it? I personally wouldn't, I've got other cars I'd prefer to buy, but I'm not going to run out tomorrow and buy a Tesla, sorry. But they are great. I think they're great, but for me, not personally. It seriously had me considering whether I would or not.
How's it currently handling roadworks? For example, between where I live in Eastbourne to Lower
Absolutely
Hutt,
fine.
we've got 5 sets of traffic lights at the moment with road cones for Africa.
Yep. Absolutely fine. The biggest issue with roadworks is that it follows the speed limit. So you approach roadworks and it'll do 30 kilometers an hour through the roadworks. And it was interesting, one of the other discussions we had yesterday was in regards to what this means and these cars at the speed limit. So you can set them to try and get into the flow of traffic. So one of the discussions we had yesterday was around, so roadworks, they are fine, except for the fact that they do the speed limit. They do 30k an hour through roadworks. And Kiwis don't do 30 kilometers an hour through roadworks, which is probably not a good thing. You can push the car to go over the speed limit. It's not an issue to do that. But Tesla's never going to set a vehicle up to break the speed limit from the factory. You've got to actively choose that. And I wouldn't do it, of course.
I can't imagine any FSD system in the world would set their vehicle up to be able to exceed the speed limit. No,
exactly.
That's just a lawsuit.
Exactly. But here's an interesting thing we're discussing yesterday, and I had mentioned this to the person I was dealing with the NZT as well, is what does this mean for road safety? So conceivably in 5 years' time, you could expect maybe 10 to 20% of the cars on the road in New Zealand have some form of self-drive system like this. And those forms of self-drive would all be doing the speed limit. And they acknowledge that you only need 10 to 20% of the market of the cars on the road to be sticking to the speed limit. And the entire network will stick to the speed limit. And what implications does that have for road safety in New Zealand? Now, I know you can get into the debate about whether speed is a factor in road safety. It is. Whether it's a bigger factor or simple pushes, that's the question. But it's interesting what this could actually mean for the market or for the overall transport system if all the cars are following the rule constantly. Could we get away with a lot less road traffic controlled, a lot less road cones, if every car that goes into roadworks does 30 kilometers an hour?
Well, that's an interesting point, because that's the age-old argument that there's nothing wrong with the roads or the cars or anything at all in New Zealand right now. We have a road toll because primarily people don't follow the rules. And, I'm not necessarily, as the cat in the hat would say, I'm not necessarily a rules guy, but the underlying truth of New Zealand is that we don't tend to follow road rules terribly well. And it's certainly a contributing factor to so many of the crashes that we have and certainly the fatalities that we have. As somebody would like to point out, vehicles don't crash by themselves by and large. The age of mechanical failure has long since passed us. And, you're absolutely right. If the other way of looking at it is if we just actually enforce the road rules to the letter as a population we have now, all this is an enforcement tool for something that you might argue that we should have all been doing a long time ago ourselves.
Yeah. Interestingly, I've got a couple of comments on this. Interestingly, I think I haven't looked at the modern stats, but a couple of years ago, last time I looked at them, about 30 to 33% of road accidents were single vehicle accidents. And that's a driver error, almost 100% with the type of cars that we have. And this is a technology that could significantly reduce that. Now, it doesn't take much to stretch the imagination that if you've got 30% that are single vehicle, there's another percentage that are where it's driver error that have been where they've been the cause of the multiple vehicle incident. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand the significance of self-drive to reduce that. The second comment I make, though, is the rebellion person in me who says, I don't want to have to self-drive all of the time, and I fear the day when officials are going to say, but road safety, we're going to make it mandatory. That, I think, would be a retrograde step. But fortunately, I think we're some time away from that. The third comment and the final comment I have on self-drive is that we have built into our brains a bit of an individual streak. And when you look at across the population and look at the psychology of a population, there's a certain percentage of people who just do not want to conform no matter what the issues are. And they will be a menace on our roads no matter what system we have in place. So for those people who think we're going to get a zero road toll because we're all self-driving vehicles, there will be people who will find their ways around that.
No, that's right.
But I think we will get somewhat, I guess, a herd immunity, right? And that it's, you can have all the my dads who want to run along at 120k an hour everywhere and do whatever. They're just not going to be able to, because you're going to have a big chunk of the market of the road fleet that's doing the speed limit. It'll be interesting to see what it does for Auckland traffic, of course, because if you can get all the cars working together and doing things correctly, you can reduce the concertina effect, and I think that can actually make traffic law. So,
but what it's worth, I remember back
let's power through. Yeah,
I was going to say, for what it's worth, and David, you remember this well. Back in the days of VIA, when I was involved, Kit Wilkerson did some really good work in the very early days of, effectively, as we knew it then, autonomous driving, autonomous vehicles, and that's morphed into the term FSD. But that was one of Kit's points that he raised, and I know Kit watches the show every now and then, and probably nodding his head right now, was the issue of congestion. One of the greater riders of congestion, if you could just actually allow a degree of conformity into traffic to mitigate against uneven merging, tailgating, rapid braking because the concertina effect of braking, all those little things that actually add up to congestion. If you could just mitigate those smaller little things, it would actually reduce the commute time by a significant margin, not least of all the argument would see the 5 or 10% reduction of vehicles on the actual roads. But this has been talked about a really, really long time. And it's interesting to see after all these years of high-level discussion, and Kit would travel the world in talking to manufacturers and designers of this sort of technology. It's like sort of the whole flying car analogy. Well, here we are in 2025, and we're now seeing what we would call our version of flying cars. It's actually here. It's here. It's now.
Yeah, to get full benefit from that does require an integration of transport infrastructure with vehicle technology. And there's a lot of potential to do that within the city space.
So the interesting thing about that too, though, David, is that the Tesla system it does not rely on a vehicle infrastructure system. I know that it would help. I'm not saying it's irrelevant. The Chinese technology is designed to work with a vehicle infrastructure system. Tesla's is entirely vision-based.
Yeah, but Tesla probably doesn't need that if other vehicles are. But what I mean by infrastructure is where you've got multiple lights. So you just think Lambton Quay from the turn-off from by the railway station out towards the airport. The number of lights there. If you can then integrate the lights and the sequencing of the lights with the vehicles, because the transport infrastructure is reading that and the cars are there, then Tesla will just be following the speed limit or following as adaptive cruise control the speed of the car in front of it. That's the sort of stuff to ease congestion. You can do the same on the motorways in terms of where there are tricky intersections and stuff like that. So But at the moment,
the crazy.
Sorry, at the moment, the point you made is that technology, as it currently stands, is a step improvement over what we've got.
Light years. I wasn't expecting it to be this good. And the things it can pick up are crazy. Like the fact that it can see the indicators on a car coming at speed from the right, from 100 meters away, is, well, maybe it can't, but it seems to. It drives like that is just absolutely crazy. It recognized when someone honked, flashed, and led it into a gap yesterday without me intervening. It's impressive. Anyway, let's power through the news and then we'll go for a little bit of a drive and run on that. So if this will work, we're running on thin internet here, people. So any instability, I'm sorry.
We can tell.
Yes. Right. So starting off, Tramier appoints former car sales executive as head of motors. So Tramier's appointed Brendan Hall as new head of motors and a member of the executive leadership team. He car sales over in Australia, Amazon Australia, and a few other things. He was most recently with BP as their head of mobility and convenience business. So quite the strong digital background. Current head of Tramier Motors, Jeremy Wade, who I took for a ride in this car yesterday, who was very impressed. He's moves into a new role within the wider Tramier organisation. So another key appointment there. Of course, they appointed Steve Vermeulen as their trade, remember the term, but their dealer representative, trade representative recently.
Dealer relationship manager, I think.
Yes. Yep. Another interesting appointment from them. I think the appointment of Steve was a good head in that direction. I'm sure this one will be the same. Do you think they're listening a little?
Sorry, Richard, you broke up there. You've gone for a second. Back again?
I think the appointment of Steve was a great one, and it looks like this new guy brings some great experience. Do you think Tramier have been listening pretty well lately and maybe heading in some good directions?
I've got a bit of a. I'm not going to go there, but I've got a couple of personal gripes right now around the constant change, if you like, and some issues within TradeMe at the moment. Let's just not go there. But it would be safe to say that I don't think all of the industry is necessarily happy with their current relationship they have with TradeMe. So the appointment of a TradeMe relationship manager, you can take that as you will.
It's positive. Right, Timperley returns for AutoTalk Live Christchurch. A bit of a last-minute confirmation here. This is in about 3 weeks' time, of course, on October 15 down in Christchurch. But we had confirmed that Stephen Timperley, the very well-known industry expert / consultant, is returning. He will present the Deloitte Motor Industry Benchmark session at AutoTalk Live Christchurch. Deloitte's have contracted him to come and do it, which is great. He's looking forward to sharing his insights with the New Zealand dealer community.
He's really good. He's probably the most insightful speaker. And you're going to run him in the earlier session, Richard? Is he an earlier speaker?
Yes, he's the second speaker. Yes, so
what he talks about, the way he puts it, sort of sets the stage for the discussions and the rest of the day. I find his approach sort of gives you the big picture sort of stuff, and you remember what he says because he's got a really articulate way of putting it, and then that sets the stage for the next series of discussions throughout the day. Well picked.
I think the same can be said for anyone who comes from Deloitte to produce this. The content is fantastic, and I find that other speakers reference it through the day, so it's always good to have it early on in the piece. So October 15th in Christchurch. If you haven't got any tickets, we actually made a bigger room this year. Grams, and added some more tables. We've already sold some of those, but we've got 3 left. So if anyone wants to come along, either jump on autotalk.co.nz/live, or just go and nag your warranty provider, your finance provider, to say, you got a table at AutoTalk Live, because they might take you along. That's the way a lot of people go there.
Us dealers love a freebie.
Now, MTA welcomes new trades migration pathway. The Motor Trade Association has welcomed the government's creation of a new trades and technician pathway for migrants, saying it recognises the value of trades in addressing workforce shortages. The announcement follows government moves to boost trades, the career option through secondary school education reforms. MTA head of advocacy James McDowell says the association has advocated for improved trades access for almost a year. We told government that it's essential to recognise that trades are skilled professions. So yeah, I think that's good. I think the market was somewhat starving, and some of the changes had made it a little bit more difficult. I do think this doesn't mitigate a need within the market, I think, for the industry to engage more in training people in New Zealand. Someone commented on the LinkedIn post on this going the other day that when was the last time you saw a car dealer going out to the local head of a big car franchise going out to a school to encourage the kids to go and train as technicians? I don't think that's entirely fair. I think that does happen, but I think potentially we do need to see more of it out there.
It does happen, Richard, and both the new and used vehicle sectors find it often difficult to way in which to engage that whole trade sector. But getting the expertise and the capability hasn't always been easy, and in past governments have made it more difficult to bring in outside expertise. So any changes that can accelerate that, I think, is useful. I think the big challenge is bringing people in from the school sector and through the apprenticeship into the system, so we don't necessarily have to rely on overseas. Here is the point, though, I think, particularly for new vehicles for the OEMs, because the vehicle technology is moving at pace, often we can't keep up with the technical skills required to maintain the vehicles and service them. So sometimes we have to bring in people from overseas to be able to get that transfer of knowledge happening, and that, I think, is what these latest moves will help make easier as well.
Right. Heavy vehicle emissions rules tighten from November. The Imported Motor Vehicle Industry Association, VIA, has reminded members of significant changes to emissions rules for heavy used vehicles that take effect on November 1. The new requirements will apply to used heavy vehicles imported from Japan in classes MD3, MD4, ME, NB, and NC, covering buses and trucks with a gross vehicle mass exceeding 3.5 tonne. All vehicles in these categories undergoing border inspections from 1st November must meet stricter Japanese emissions standards. I'm not going to go into all those details there because this is for a relatively small number of dealers. But if you are one of those dealers or importers, it's very important. I'm hoping you're already on top of it. You probably are. But don't get caught out because
that sector's generally pretty switched on when it comes to being ahead of the pending legislation coming on forward. And if you're not, I'd suggest they probably haven't either been in business very long or they're about to not be.
Yeah, it's quite small numbers for used commercials. Yeah.
Now, I won't go into depth on this one either because we've already reported a lot of it, and you can go and look. I think if you want to, you should go to the VIA website and check it out, or we can, or it's up in summary on AutoTalk. VIA has released their submission on the Land Transport Clean Vehicle Standard Amendment Bill. They obviously are in support. They're pragmatic about it. So, the details are there on that. So go have a look at that. The interesting thing of being around Wellington yesterday, the buzz there is that something really needs to change, and this is probably still not enough. And there is a lot of pressure from industry associations on the minister to do something beyond what is there. And it's interesting, if we've read the last AutoTalk magazine, you'll see there that we really do have a suggestion from the MIA that a demand side push potentially is needed. But at the same time, we're hearing the chance of the government doing anything in that territory is pretty much impossible. If for nothing else, that there's not really the officials left to work on these things. The new problem that's developing down in Wellington, I'm hearing from multiple sources, is that they've removed so many people from the Ministry of Transport and the NZTA that there's no one left to actually do any work. Which is, and I'm being glib there, and there are people left, but the work load is just beyond the hands there to do it right now. I'm not sure what you heard from your old contacts down there, David, but I think this could be a developing issue that we could just start slipping behind on some things simply because there's not the resource there.
Yes and no. I think officials always don't like it when there are cuts, But if you map the growth and then the shrinkage of officials and departments, it's not quite as bad as what some people make it out to be, but it is significant at the moment. But I think there is a different reason why the government might not want to touch this. They have a lot of things on their agenda before the next election, and in this area, if they make too big a changes, I think they're worried that if a government changes, then the incoming government will just change it back again. At the moment, I think what they're trying to do is make changes to make it more sustainable and more endurable. And I think the tweaks that they've done has done that. With emission CO2 reductions and the sort of tools that you have, the intervention tools that the government would use, always means that it's going to hurt at the boundary. And the question is the boundary in the right place? In my view, the boundary is within the grey area. It's not outside the grey area once these changes are put in. But the grey area is relatively wide. It's not a hard and cut line. And so if you've got some people whinging and others not, you're probably in the right place. I'm not close enough to know whether there are too many whinging on this at the moment, but let's see what happens.
I think the import sector is still really concerned about all they've really done so far. The change has just kicked the can another year or so down the road, but some of the fundamental issues around the import industry. And I should say this carefully. I think for quite some time now in New Zealand, we've had a much better relationship between the new sector and the used. And I think that these sort of things going forward, we're talking about actually need to be bipartisan. We keep on trying to sort of inject this dynamic tension between the used industry fearing that the new industry is somehow trying to suppress used imports. The new industry somehow fears that used imports are encroaching upon their turf. So we end up with a little bit too much tension and possibly a more bipartisan approach towards legislation changes that enable a whole of fleet approach and solutions that don't just benefit one side or the other. The import industry really is in trouble. It's in big trouble going on forward. And it's been suggested to me that there's a thinking around certain quarters of Wellington where that actually is no longer a consideration. Okay, so you guys can't make it work? Well, bad news for you. But there's always that point forgotten that it's not that the used industry can just sort of scramble itself around and find alternatives. We are beholden by the global market that we play in, that we just take components from, rather than, we don't make used cars here. It's a statement we make over and over again. We don't make used cars here. And so we just have to work with the best possible standards that we can gain from these other jurisdictions without cutting the flow off of the very thing that we're trying to provide.
Yeah, you're caught. Sorry, I was just going to say the used car sector is caught simply because the vast majority of vehicles come from Japan, and Japanese manufacturers, by and large, are slow to get on the EV gravy train. Well, it's not really a gravy train, but they're slow to really accelerate that technology.
Train's slowing, I think, rather than growing.
Yeah. Sorry, Richard.
Yep. I have a solution. I have a solution that the government could do. And I don't hear it be done, David. No, I know it can't be, but I don't want to hear that. But I have a solution.
Sorry, you're cutting up.
We're having some reception issues. Okay, yep. I have a solution that I don't want to hear that the government can't do it. I know they can't, but here's my idea, and that is they pause the CCS, freeze it in place for 6 months, and the reason for that is basically they can do it on the justification that times are really tough for New Zealand. Cost of living is through the roof. By doing this, we can bring the cost of cars down on a temporary basis until the market begins to recover, and so forth. So it's sellable to the public. It's sellable to everyone. It's only a pause. They're not pause. You pause it for 6 months, and that means that the very, very quickly for those 6 months, hopefully that will bring the cost of some vehicles down a little. I know it's probably more a thing than an actual real drop. You can potentially bring forward some of your dirtier cars into that 6 month period, which means that the next year's target's probably a little bit easier to achieve, still almost impossible to achieve, but a little bit easier to achieve. And you do get this short hit into the industry of of some cars being sold, if nothing, for nothing else, on the idea that they're cheaper because the CCS is paused.
The selfish aspect of the industry, Richard, the selfish part of me says, yep, great, let's sell some more cars in the next 6 months. Does not change a single part of what I said about kicking the can down the road. It does not change the fundamental issue the industry is going to have in a couple of 3 years.
Yep.
Look, hey, if government turned around
the government can't. Yeah, but short of dropping the whole thing, the government can't fix this overnight. And we almost need a slight overnight temporary fix, for me.
Well, we're debating the impossible to actually fix. You're right. We've built ourselves a framework that we're leading ourselves to our own sector doom, and that hasn't changed. We just set the clock back a couple of minutes. That's all. Would the industry respond to a 6-month hiatus in CCS? David, I don't know what the new sector would do. Would it necessarily import anything different than it currently is? I don't know. From the used sector, would it change very much? Markedly, possibly not. It sounds like a nice idea, and we all want to sell more cars. And so, look, bring anything on that wants us to sell more cars. But that isn't the point we're talking about here. We're talking about the future of the scheme itself and what that means for our fleet. Very
right.
serious.
The new it wouldn't work for the new vehicle sector because generally their orders are 4 to 6 months in advance.
I was going to say, what are they going to do? Run out tomorrow and go up the road to Mr. Toyota and say, look, you know what? All those orders we cancelled, we didn't have for the last 3 or 4 years. We'll have those. Can you get them on a boat, please? It doesn't change anything.
And it would only be a blip. And I think that the thing that worries me. Well, I'll say 2 things. Firstly, Richard, the government could do it if it really wanted to. They could make anything happen. The question is it the right thing to do? And I'm with Graham on this. No, because the real concern is what happens between now and 2030. And what are there still some structural changes that need to be made to the CCS to ensure that we are not artificially pricing vehicles with a penalty that then is just the cost that is passed on to the consumer where there is no environmental gain. That was always the argument that the new and the used car sectors raised with the government when the CCS was being developed, was that the pathway to CO2 reductions need to be set at a level that you're pushing the boundary. Some will hurt, most won't. But if you set it too tough, all that happens is you put a price premium on vehicles, whether it's imported, used or new, that the consumers end up paying for without any environmental gain. Now, when you look at the use of economic instruments for environmental gain, that makes no rational sense at all. That is the question I think the trade that VEA and MIA are grappling with at the moment is it a sensible way forward, or are we artificially putting cost on consumers with no environmental gain?
Yeah. Right. Now, I'm just going to blast through these last 3 stories. No comment, please. We'll just run through them at pace. Aussie dealers, they're going through it too. Their associations basically stepped in on their new vehicle efficiency standard. Apparently we're supposed to call it the clean vehicle standard now, by the way. So we keep forgetting. They're talking about the cost they're saying it's going to impose on franchise car dealers over there, $2.1 billion according to their calculations. There's a new Triumph dealership in Auckland, Triumph motorcycle dealership in Auckland. They've moved in with Harley Davidson there, and then BMW's moved in with Harley Davidson in Hamilton. So I'm wondering if Harley's maybe taking the reins off the need for single franchise for them. And Colonial Motor Company has released their annual report, and they've released their results, but that's worth a read if you're really interested in what they are up to. Big, decent trading profit, better than expected, but still it's been a tough year for them as much as it has been for everyone. So yes, that is the news for this week. Now, how are we going to make this work? Now, if I disappear briefly, just stay with me, lads. I'm going to add this to stage.
Crash.
Yes. Can everyone see the top corner? Yep. Right. I'm going to put my laptop over there because. Right. So we're up to, there's only really 4 roads. We can't go very fast. This is a terrible test, but we'll give it a go anyway. So to do FSD, we go in here. You pick an address. I'm going to go to the Uppity Fire Station.
This is one of those, I hope this goes well, type demonstrations.
Where he is pretty remote.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, it's going to be interesting because this little road down the end of the street here, I'm not entirely sure is a road. I would turn around and go the other way, but let's let it do what it needs to do, right? So we're going to go start FSD supervised. Tap the brake to confirm. Going to indicate and pull out. Keep my hands down here. Now this is a little 1-lane gravelly road that we're going down now. I'm not sure if you guys can see much out the window. And so it's only going to go slow down here because it's really just a driveway.
So no handbrake turns at the back?
No. Are you guys seeing this? Is it working for you?
Yeah, I think, Richard, you have the nation watching you right now. No pressure. The entire nation of automotive of interest is watching this. In fact, it's probably syndicated globally right now.
No, it's running slow because it thinks that this is a bit of a driveway. But you can always speed it up by just putting your foot on the gas, and it'll just go a bit faster. But here we go, coming up onto one of the more main streets of Uppity. Into the corner. Give it a bit of speed. It's a very weird layout here. It's like 1 lane into 2.
It's figuring that out so far.
Yep.
Can I just say that FSD is not for me, but I admire the technology and the capability that it might bring for others. It's not me.
Yes.
I've got no interest in it from my personal use. Not that I'm not interested in the technology or what it can do.
I'm in
the road here.
I'm in the mixed bag, Graham.
Look across.
There are certain places where I would use it, and places where I prefer to self-drive. So the ability to switch between, depending on location and what I'm doing, I think would be really handy.
Yes. So there you go, counting down to 30 meters, and we are now outside the Uppity Fire Station.
Look at that.
Which you guys can't see. It's going to pull into the car park.
All right.
So you just set the destination on the GPS, Richard.
Yes. Oh, there it goes. To a car park.
Nice. Is it parking for you as well?
So the parking car park thing is an interesting thing, right? It can, but there's my understanding is that there's a second feature coming called Smart Summon, which will allow it to drive around car parks, but we're just not quite there yet. So if we go back around the corner let's go to the T. Oh.
I've got to say right about now, Granny with the broken wrist, you have lost her at this point. You have lost her. I've got.
You can do this on voice though. You can tell it. So I've got to put in the park. That's user error there. So I can now go. Uppity School. It's going to be unhappy now because we're off map. But look, Uppity is a terrible place to be testing this. This thing managed to drive through the central Wellington unaided during peak hour traffic last night. Testing it in an unmapped mountain village that Google barely understands is potentially not the best place to do it.
You're driving it now.
Yes.
Yep.
I was just getting it onto a place where I believed it could do what it needed to do. So there we go. And
So I'll just raise a small little point that sort of I said with humour a second ago. But so I work in a sector where we've got we do have a lot of older customers looking at vehicles, retired, and mobility to an extent maybe, but a lot of our clients struggle with the basic concepts of anything more complicated than a key and a button for the air conditioning. And one of the not gripes, but one of the points I've made about modern motor vehicles recently is we've gone overboard when it comes to technology in our vehicles, particularly driver interface technology to operate the functions and the subsystems of a vehicle. And I know for a lot of my customers, for example, right now, you lost them the minute you hopped in and you wanted to put in the GPS where you're going to go, you lost them. And I think that the need for analog, if you want to put it that way, analog vehicles is not going anywhere anytime soon. It might take several generations to see that change. And even then, it might be that as you age, I don't know, right now I'm moderately capable 57-year-old male, you might argue otherwise. But as I age, perhaps I won't be. But I'll tell you what, I hopped in a little rental car last week in Sydney. I won't say what sort of vehicle it was. But I struggled with the tech in that vehicle to operate it and to get some of the basic functions running. And I thought to myself, man, if I'm struggling with this, then how is the next person coming along that's not quite as technically enabled? And I think the market for analog is not dying anytime soon.
Interestingly,
okay, I have an answer to this. Sorry, so let me go first, David. I have an answer to this, Graham. Is that I go back to my mother-in-law, right? Who is exactly the person that you're talking about, and yet somehow she is more than capable of FaceTiming, of doing Wordle on her iPad, of using silly face characters with FaceTime to her nieces and to her grandchildren in Australia. They learn this, and this is by far the simplest system in any car in New Zealand. You punch it in, you hold the button, and you touch the brake. It's not like you're trying to get the right button series on a steering wheel that I've seen with so many European cars. It is so much easier, and theoretically, you can do it with voice. I'll try it. Navigate to the Uppity Tavern. Mike can't hear my voice, but you pick wherever you want to go.
Did it say, what are your intentions, Richard? Have you a designated driver for the return?
I think you both have valid points, and the technology interface will become easier. But I just compare between myself and my wife. We have quite different attitudes to driving. I quite like the technology, so therefore I've got a mindset that is quizzical, and so I explore it. In the car, my wife's car, so it's a Skyline hybrid sedan. It's got one of the easiest auto adaptive cruise controls there is. It's just you press a button and away it goes. She refuses to use it because I can't do that while I'm driving, or I don't. I'm not interested. So there's am I interested enough to do it, or am I not? And
this is the interesting thing with this system is you do it before you're driving. All those other systems, you have to do it when you're driving. This one, you do it before you drive. It's an interesting difference.
Yes, but the point I was just about to make, Richard, is that I think the answer to Graham's question comes down to mindset and need. So need will change the mindset, but a lot of drivers know that the whole belief system about driving and what's involved is a complicated set of values that they've developed over the years. But need and want will change that, or can change that. So it comes down to, do I want to change it? And the answer for that that the new vehicle manufacturers are facing at the moment is, what is the easiest interface to allow that to happen? Because they recognize that some of the interfaces they've had have not been that easy. Volkswagen, for example, are going away from their small, fiddly little dials to something that's a lot more easier to use. Mazda a few years ago introduced a system around adaptive cruise control that was difficult for people to use. So they've amended it and adjusted it. So that's the sort of stuff I think that we'll see. So there'll be a lot of science going into how do we make this easy to use.
Yeah. Anyway, look, that's it for this week. Maybe we'll try and get you guys into some self-drive cars and you can see how it actually works in the real world. But I am going to jump on the road now and head back up to Auckland and then on home. I am away next week in Korea, and I think when Friday morning when the show's going on, I'm going to be somewhere on a plane. So I'm not sure there'll be one next week, but we'll see how we go. Anyway, thanks, Graham. Thanks, Dave. And thanks, everyone, for watching the AutoTalk Weekly Wrap.
And thanks, Jenkins, for your comments.
Yes, the BMW iDrive 7 is a good balanced tech, though I will want to say one thing. Even BMW to almost admit that their current system is quite complicated, but it has an exceptionally...
And just as Drift is dropping out there, I was going to say, Ra, I didn't see your comments. Sorry, good morning to you. Ra's a good mate of mine from the sunny South Island, and he's got a pretty good head and shoulders on when it comes to the motor vehicle industry. So good morning, Ra. I'm sorry I didn't see your comments.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, we'll catch you everyone maybe not next week.
No. Happy travels.